Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jane Hewitt and I'm the Capability Building Coordinator at TechSoup New Zealand and Connecting Up. Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand are part of the Info Exchange Group, a not-for-profit social enterprise that tackles the biggest social challenges through the smart and creative use of technology. And for those of you who haven't joined us in a webinar before, we have an annual diary on both of our websites, which explains all the workshops, boot camps and webcons, which help the social sector upskill in all things digital. So welcome today to the webinar, An Introduction to Microsoft Teams, with Conan and Alex from the IT team. And before we begin, we'll just start with a bit of housekeeping today. All the lines are muted, so if you have any technical issues, you can type them into your questions box on the GoToWebinar panel, and I should be able to assist. And if you've got any questions during the session, please also type them into the questions box. And both Alex and Conan will answer them in the Q&A session, which will be coming up towards the end of the webinar. And please note that your comments and questions cannot be seen by the rest of the group. And if you're on a Wi-Fi connection, please can you just close any other programs that you have open just to ensure the quality of the audio and video. And please note this webinar is being recorded and you will get a copy of the recording and the slides towards the end of today. And before we start, I'd also like to remind you that there'll be a short survey popping up at the end of this webinar, and we would really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to provide us with some feedback. So that's all from me. I will now pass over to Conan and Alex to get things started.
Wonderful, thank you very much, Jane. So as Jane mentioned, we are the IT team, Alex and I, or a part of the IT team, and we're pleased to be able to show you Teams, which is a really key tool, we believe, in helping organisations and businesses, both not-for-profit and regular commercial organisations, to improve their internal and external communication. It's very impressive. Also, it's particularly beneficial to not-for-profits because it's pretty much free with all Office 365 plans. So it's a bit of a win-win. So yeah, what we're going to do to kick things off though, well, firstly, I should introduce myself. My name's Conan Daly. I'm the General Manager of the IT team. And we also have Alex. Do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Yep. I'm Alex, also from the IT team. I'm a systems engineer and I look after a lot of customers and I do a lot with Microsoft Teams. So hopefully it can help you guys.
He's kind of our internal expert on 365 and Teams and SharePoint. Yeah, we obviously do a lot with 365 and that has increased since COVID. And so COVID is, you may have actually seen us do some webinars before, you may not have, and we've done various, we've done a Teams introduction webinar before, but we did it before COVID, and while there is a little bit of similarity in the content, you know, things have moved on a bit. So what we're going to do to kick off is we're going to start with a few polls just to get an idea of the audience, and it helps us to cater kind of our content and probably our comments. So yeah, chuck up the first one. Excuse me. Nice and simple one. So, wow, interesting results. So the majority of the people attending this webinar are currently using Teams. And that's the interesting thing about Teams. There's a lot to it. So a lot of people are using it, and they could be using it 1% or 80% or more. Hopefully not more, though you might not get too much out of this. But yeah, and it is still applicable for those that haven't used Teams before, and there is still a lot in this. We believe there's a lot in this webinar for those that are using it. Do you want to jump onto the next poll there, Jane? Pardon me. So yeah, where are you at in your Teams journey? I mean, this is a key thing. Video calling like Zoom is obviously a common thing that people started out with, but you may be using that, you may be using instant messaging, maybe using both or more. And if you're still not using it, tick that. Okay, so yeah, expected results. We do have a lot of people still not using it, of course. And then there's a good chunk that are using Teams, channels, video calling, and instant messaging. So there's quite a few that are right into this. There still will be some good content for you guys here, we believe. And the rest of them are using 1 or 2 or 3 various tools within Teams. Well, they're using video calling or instant messaging only. So it'll be good to give you guys some tips on how to take it to the next level. All right, we are going to kick on. So to start off with, who is this webinar for? As we said, organizations that haven't used Teams but are interested in learning more, which seems like there's a big portion there. Organizations that are using Teams for video calling only and wish to expand their usage, and organizations that are using, well, pretty much all of you, I would say, those that want to delve in. Well, since there is quite a few, and this is why we do these surveys, since there is quite a few that are using Teams video calling and also the channels, we will put some content, we'll throw some content out there that can benefit you guys and help you guys to use it better. Because technically you are using the 3 core facets of Teams, which is great. So what we're going to cover today: what is Teams, why use it, core elements, we will demonstrate some of those core elements, and we'll give a few adoption tips along the way. So what we're not going to cover, we're not going to cover setting up Teams from scratch. Not that it is hard, but we're not going to go into that. We're not going to cover the advanced or any kind of transition migration, which there's not a huge amount to it. We're not going to go into the advanced functions of Teams. That's for a separate webinar. And we're not going to go into other functions of 365 like Exchange, SharePoint, and various other things. So just before we get started, a little bit about the IT team. So yeah, we're a IT managed service provider. The reason I have to sort of talk about this is sometimes we do get people that come to us after these webinars and say, I don't think you can do this, but perhaps you could help me with this. And we're like, no, we do that thing. So yeah, we're an IT company. We do everything related to IT. A lot of it's done remotely. So if any of you, not to go into too much detail here, but if any of you need or would like some IT help or guidance with regards to 365 or anything to do with Teams, you're welcome to contact us. Of course, you're welcome to contact TechSoup and Connecting Up as well, and they do provide a lot of help. So yeah, a lot of our customers are not-for-profits, and so we do have a fair amount of knowledge in this sector, and we do provide support to New Zealand and Australian organisations. So what is Teams? Obviously, some that are using this already will know, but this is a relevant topic, and we're going to do a very short video as well. But Teams, it has a lot to it. Teams is quite a deep tool, but the core of it is meetings and calling. This is your kind of Zoom alternative. So, or it's a competitor to Zoom, and the meetings and callings is the kind of what Zoom or traditionally Skype has done, but it's not the only part of Teams. Even though a lot of you and a lot of people are using Teams just for this, the next phase is chat and collaboration. This is kind of where Teams comes into its own in helping organizations to take better advantage of collaboration and communication. And then the lesser known apps and workflow. As you can see here, this is the ability to integrate applications and workflow, and we're going to show a little bit of that and talk a little bit about that today. Is a way to take great advantage of Teams. It's usually the last element where people take it to the next level. Digging into this is more of a different webinar, I have to say, so we're not going to go heavily into the apps and workflow. So now I'm just going to show a quick video. So this is, in a nutshell, this is kind of Microsoft style, which they kind of explain what Teams is, and this is going to accelerate it for us because we could do it in 10 slides. We're going to do it in a 1-minute video, but it's a little bit more marketing than it is kind of substance, but it does accelerate the what we're going to show here today. Okay, hopefully this will pop up in a second for you all. So I was muted, hopefully you can hear me now. Yeah, look, we had 3 or 4 slides which explained that Teams was a communication tool and it was good for sharing, and we thought it's better to show Microsoft people on very fancy couches with very white teeth explaining that a bit quicker than we did. So just moving on, some existing alternatives to Teams. So email, obviously Teams is attempting to reduce the amount of email in and outside of your organization. Email is, obviously it's a tool that we use to communicate. It's the primary communication tool for businesses and organizations, but it is inherently a slower way to communicate. It's the 30 years ago, people would have wrote, 40 years ago, people would have wrote a letter, and now, and kind of Teams is kind of the equivalent of picking up the phone. Slack, some of you may use or have heard of Slack. Teams is effectively combining this Zoom and this Slack, as well as a few other functions. Some organizations using phone, as in text message, and Messenger to communicate, and we call that, in a way, particularly Messenger, something called shadow IT. And it's really, those could be very effective tools, but you don't have really much control over them as an organization. So then they're not perfect. Mobile calling, Teams is really an alternative to mobile calling, and I can tell you a little bit about how it's changed for our organization too. Skype for Business is a predecessor to Teams. So these are all existing alternatives to Teams, so to speak, and it doesn't mean you have to get rid of all of them. You're not going to stop emailing if you move to Teams, but more of the communication will go from various elements of these, or completely wholly allow you to stop using these tools potentially. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how the IT team were working, and this was pre-COVID in a way, so it's but because everyone's had the COVID experience, the lockdowns and having to remote work. So, but Teams had a big improvement, a big benefit to us pre-COVID, as well as obviously during COVID. But so just to give you an idea about the varied sort of way that we're working. So we were using phones, sort of desk phones, obviously, cell phones a lot, and text messages to communicate, as well as everything else. We used to have very poor meetings, when we were doing video calling, particularly with our remote offices. So the IT team has multiple offices, and back pre-COVID, we weren't working from home a lot, but we used to have staff meetings every week, and we'd have them on a big screen, and the calls were not very strong. And in the end, it just felt like it was better if we just had each other on a just had the people in the office was a better meeting, and so the remote offices felt disconnected. And sometimes for conference calls, we'd have enough issues with the calling, particularly when we're using Skype for Business, that we'd end up just popping a cell phone on the table and putting it on a speaker, which was pretty atrocious. And furthermore, in the morning, we'd have a lot of emails, cycling around with regards to things like sickness and absences and people having appointments. And that's something that Teams has improved a lot. So now we use Teams for internal communication, internal meetings, conference calls, internal and external, and we do our announcements, like talking about the sickness, and a whole lot of other things in Teams. Now, other key things, project teams. This is a big thing. And Alex will show this a little bit. We have projects in the IT team, and we're talking about customer projects and internal projects, and we form a team in Teams, and we do a lot of work in there, including polls, meeting notes, getting feedback, lots of things in there particular to each project, depending on what it is. We put our workflows and forms in Teams. We record all our meetings, and then they're transcribed, which is a function we sometimes use, and we do keep our documents and file storage in there, which is a little bit complicated to explain that in too much detail. And so Alex will be touching on it, but we'll be talking about it in another webinar. So just a quick visual of how we use Teams. So particularly this helps if you've never seen Teams before, if you've never used it, this could be a little bit alien to you, but simply put, we use Teams to communicate with each other, instant message. So Alex and I, we will talk to each other every day, right? IT team has about 30 staff, so I don't talk to everyone every day, but I will send them probably at least 1 or 2 messages every day. Don't see them every day in person, and we don't video call every day, but we'll send each other several messages. Then we'll also have multiple a couple of people will have a conversation maybe about a particular thing, and we'll have an online conversation via instant messaging. It's a bit faster on the computer, on the laptop, than using Messenger or something like that, and it's a bit more professional as well. We can put images, we can put documents up, and then as you can see, something like a regional chat. This is a group for those that are outside of Christchurch, and they have various conversations, and when they're covering for certain things, and that's more of a permanent arrangement. So there's various ways you can do these conversations, but this is what the instant messaging looks like. Continuing on, this is the Teams. That's a bit of a nuisance, but Teams and channels. Are you going to say something else?
Yeah, no, it's always confusing when people are talking about Teams and Teams. Microsoft Teams normally refers to the program, and a team refers to one of these groups inside Microsoft Teams. Yeah.
So as you can see here, we have them split up almost by department. So engineers, and then we have it based on project. Project this, that's another project. This is another project, and there'll be sub channels, which are these in there. That's how you structure teams, just to give those that aren't using this a bit of an idea. And Alex is going to demonstrate that. So before Alex does his demonstration, we're going to just talk a little bit about chat, as I showed before. So the purpose of chat is to allow your basically individuals or companies to have discussions with each other. Faster than email, you usually get an answer immediately. It works very well with mobile phone. One could feel this as a distraction, and that is a fair call. We disagree. We think it is an asset or a feature. We feel very connected with each other. The IT team are working a lot remotely. I'm in the office and there's quite a few people here, but we do spend a lot of time working at home, and Teams has really enabled us to do that. If we didn't use Teams the way we do, we would find our working from home to be an inferior experience to working in the office. Now, I know a lot of people on this call, on this webinar, will probably not believe that working from home is a good thing. I'm not here to debate the politics around working from home versus working from the office, but what I can tell you is that we have not suffered any productivity decrease, and there's been some benefits to us in having people working from home from a productivity point of view, and also people's well-being. Yeah, we don't have a stance about whether people should work from home or work in the office, but using Teams properly has enabled us to do it. Before we used it to its fullest, we were not able to achieve that, and we had a real problem because when people were in the office, we could see them, we knew what they were doing, and we could connect with them. And then when people were at home, we didn't know what they were doing. We didn't know if they were mowing the lawns or working. Sounds like I'm not trusting, but we did have that challenge. And once we got Teams and we could use the presence and we got some rules around how we were going to use it, it becomes very powerful. So I'm going to now pass over to Alex to do a demonstration of chat.
Thank you, Conan.
One moment. Sorry, guys.
Hopefully you guys can see my team. So I've just got a demo team client here. It's very blank, and I've only got one chat with Megan, who's actually Conan. Conan's alter ego. So yeah, the first and easiest method of sending Conan a message is just to type in the chat box like this, and immediately it will pop up on his side of the screen. And I can instantly see whether or not he's seen it or not, just by hovering over here and seeing seen. So yeah, like Conan was talking about earlier, how do you know if someone's seen your message or if they're mowing the lawn? This is one of the quick and easy ways to see, yep, he's online, he's writing back to me, thanks. And he's replied to me straight away. You'll be familiar with this. Every messaging program is kind of similar in terms of you're writing messages back and forth to each other. I can pretty easily add in people to the conversation. If we need to bring someone else in to get their opinion, just click up here and start typing a name. I don't really have anyone else, but I could just start typing and it'll instantly find other people from my organization to add them up here. Also, as Conan was alluding to earlier, we can quickly check set the presence, and we encourage strongly anyone that starts using Teams to start using presence. So I can, at the moment, you can see that I'm in a meeting, I'm doing this webinar, but if I was available, I can just switch it back to available, and that will go green. Also, a lot of the time, if you're going out to lunch and you're going to tell someone, hey, I'm not going to respond straight away, appear away, and then set a message. You can set that to expire in 1 hour. Oops, I just locked my PC.
Well done. Just this was something that we at the IT team decided to do. We decided to come up with a bit of a policy. Now, not saying this is what you should do, but we said, look, if you're going to be away from your computer and you're not going to be contactable over Teams for an hour, more than an hour, then we'd appreciate it if people update their status menu. And the thing is that contactable doesn't mean you have to receive a call. It just means if someone messages you that you're likely to be able to respond, even if it's to say I'm busy. But that allowed us to, the challenge with working from home and people working in multiple locations is accessibility. And the biggest complaint we find with staff being busy and working from home and being in multiple locations is they say, we don't know how, we couldn't get a hold of you, but you seem to be very busy and we're not sure what you're doing or if we should or shouldn't contact you. Some of it's people worry that the other person's too busy. And so they don't want to contact them. But when you get teams and people are more available, then they're more likely to shoot a quick message back. I'll look at that later. I'll contact you later. And so we came up with a bit of a rule, a policy, so to speak, semi-unofficial, which was that if you're away for more than an hour, standard working hours, chuck your status up. And that's usually if you're going out for a long lunch or you've got an appointment, not you've ducked into the bathroom. Continue, yeah. Alex.
Yeah, so we use this all the time, and I'll just reset that again. This also ties in with your Outlook status as well. So if you're out of office, set in Outlook, it will also show up here. So they're the same, so you don't need to set it twice. It's also very easy to share files. So just an example, we won't open it up. But if I want to say drop a CSV or an Excel file, just go like this. And I can just send it. It takes a second to upload it, and then it will send it straight through to Conan, and it'll pop up in the chat history. He can make changes, and then they will update in real time. So this prevents having to email attachments to people, which is a common thing to do if you're not using Teams, and then you end up with multiple copies of the same document. You can see here as well that Megan/Conan's seen it and thanked me for sending it through. So very, very quick way to get documents around the place. Just going back again to contacting people, if you do want to get someone's attention, down here is a cool feature that we use quite kind of often. Standard message will just give a little pop-up in the system tray, and it saying that someone's trying to get in touch with you, but it doesn't really prompt you more than once to check your Teams. An important message is kind of like when you mark an email as it important, and so it shows up with the red little exclamation mark. But an urgent message is slightly more aggressive than that. So it's going to, if I was to send a message to Conan, it's going to keep messaging him every couple minutes, popping up on his screen for the next 20 minutes saying, check me out, check me out. Again, we've kind of got an informal rule. Only use the urgent if it's actually urgent. The problem being, or the issue, is if you make all your messages urgent, nothing is urgent anymore. Yeah, so that will keep popping up. Yeah, that keeps popping up on his screen until he acknowledges it, which he has done so by giving a thumbs up. Also, it's very easy to quickly start a call with Conan, either video or voice, just up here, or even quickly share my screen. So if I'm trying to quickly communicate a message across to Conan really fast, it can be even quicker than in the office. In the office, I might have to say, hey, Conan, can you come over to my desk? I need to show you something. With this, he doesn't even need to move. I can just click the share screen button and instantly start sharing the screen with him. Normally, what we'd do in the office, we'd say, can I call? Conan will say yes, hopefully. And once he's approved it, you can just start calling. We normally do video calls.
Yeah, we always do video calls.
Always do video calls, yeah.
Unless you're you're on your mobile or driving or something like that, but we do video calls because we believe that is the and we're going to show that in the next time. We believe that is the that is a meeting. A audio call is a phone call, and a video call is a meeting. You need body language to be able to effectively communicate. And when you start doing video calling as a matter of point, and you encourage your staff and your team to not turn their video off because they haven't done their hair or whatever, it does generally improve your communication. But yeah, is that in the next demonstration as well?
Oh, I'll do that as part of the meetings demo. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. So I'll hand back to you, and we can start looking at what a team is, which is the core of Microsoft Teams.
Yes. Cool. So, Teams. Yeah, and as Alex said, we don't love the naming convention. We don't love that it's Microsoft Teams or Teams or Teams Team or whatever how Alex said before. But it is, I guess, the best way to describe it. Why use Teams? So as we mentioned earlier, the alternative to using Teams and channels is something like Slack or maybe an intranet, but it is effectively a very key part of the system. And if you're not using this to its fullest, I would say that you're really only scratching the surface of Teams. You're using Teams as a video calling system and instant messaging, which allows you to do a lot, but it doesn't really get into the main reasons why you use it. So as we showed before in a couple of slides, how we use Teams is kind of based on department or team within the company. Our IT team, IT team teams, we've got an engineering team, we've got a service desk team, we've got a accounts or customer team, we've got a finance team, an admin team, and they have their own teams. And that's not just for them to chat to each other, it's to post messages, to post polls, things that aren't direct communication. You don't want to send someone a message to get a response. You want to put something up and say, kind of similar to how you might send a general email. You're not expecting a response. You're kind of informing people. And so it allows people to communicate directly or indirectly, you could say, to those teams. But really, it's about the collaboration side of things. So it's and the sub channels allows you to do it. So under the engineering team, for example, they'll have technology, and then they'll have customers, and then they'll have probably on-call and absences and other things. Alex, you could probably go on about. So this is why you wish to use Teams rather than just direct communication. Direct communication will pop up and alert you down the bottom in a chat, whereas the Teams is something you're more, there is a notification segment, but you'll more go to it when you get the time. And you can permission this off, or you can have it open. There are lots of ways to do it. The other element I should say that where it really comes into its own is projects. So we'll have a project, something that's going on for 2 to 3 months. This could be an office move. It could be a social event. It could be a particular initiative that's happening, and you wish to get some content in there for a period. And so we'll create a team, we'll add 3 or 4 people to that team, we'll create some sub channels or just have a general one, and that's where we'll organize our meetings, we'll put our documents, we'll put our communication, hey, we want to meet, or hey, we found this thing, what do you guys think? That kind of thing. So Alex is going to demonstrate. Have I missed anything else, Alex, on Teams?
No, that sounds good. That's perfect.
Yeah. So I'll pass over to Alex to do a demonstration. These are some of the things he's going to demonstrate amongst others. Whoops. Sorry, there's a few clicks to change presenter.
Hopefully I'm looking at the right screen. So yeah, so we've just been looking in the chat function, but if we drop down into Teams, you'll see here it's got a red @ symbol. It means someone's mentioned something. And you'll see that I've got a couple demonstration teams here. We've got the X1050 launch team, which is a fictional project for the X1050, was that a rocket, a plane, something like that, project. And we've got a bunch of different channels. So to keep basically in every single team, you're going to have multiple different threads of conversation. So in this particular one, it's a product launch. It's a design of a product. So if you're designing a product, you need to have a design channel to talk about design aspects. Maybe how you're going to bring your product to the market. So they've got a channel for that. The legal stuff, that's got a separate channel. You get the point. There's different channels underneath Teams to keep each of the conversation threads separate. We find if you've just got one channel underneath the team for something, let's pretend this is finance, everything will get very muddy very quickly. You'll lose track of which conversation is where, because all the conversation will be running over each other. By having multiple channels, you can split the conversation about the subject out into different areas. So yeah, we've got a few here. Generally, we'd use the general one for just discussing like stuff about the team. Should we make a new channel? That kind of thing. And then we'll use the channels for more specific discussions. Once we're inside a channel, it looks very similar to the chat screen, but as opposed to just having a message bar down the bottom, we can start typing a message. You can start new conversations, and everything is kind of grouped around conversations. So think about these in the old school land of email. Each one of these would be an email thread. So if we look at design usability testing, you can see that everyone's chipping in their 2 cents. We've got some pictures and all that back and forwards of people discussing the point. You can see the importance and the pictures like in the chat is also available here in Teams as well. Along the top here as well, we've got files. So you can quickly and easily drop in files so everyone can see them. Same as what we were doing in chat. Just click into, you just drag and drop, and then it saves as a file. I'm not sure if anyone has actually done it in this conversation. And once you've got the file, you can just click on it and open it up within Teams straight away. You don't need to open up Word. You don't need to browse through SharePoint or file structure to try to find it. You can just open it up straight with Teams and edit it. And if anyone else was to open the document, they can also edit it and view it in real time. So, common use case, you would drop a file into the channel, into the posts, and then everyone would open it up and in real time edit it. So yeah, it's a pretty great thing to do.
Yeah, and it's not like something like Zoom where you know, you put a document into the meeting so people can download it, and then once the meeting's over, it disappears into the ether. This is something more permanent, and it does, getting into the advanced side of Teams, it actually files it into SharePoint based on the structure of Teams, which can become, and in some ways should become, your permanent sort of file server replacement or permanent file storage or document storage system. And that's something that we probably ought not to go into too much detail, but it's more to show you, to explain that this is not just a gimmick of, oh, I'll chuck something up and people comment and then we sort of forget about it. This can be the final resting place of that document, so to speak.
Yeah, it's to try to keep all the conversation on one topic in one place. That can be files, and it can also be communications and meetings, and we'll get onto that shortly. And to set up a new team, it's very simple. Everyone can just click join or create a team, and from scratch. And there's a few different types of teams that you can have. Private team is what you're probably most familiar with. If I click this, I'll get the option to add different members to the team who I want to be involved, and then we can go on from there. And that's private, so not everyone in the organization can see it, and any files that are shared or any meetings that are had and recorded are locked down into that team. We've got public, so public teams are interesting ones. So these, if you've got different areas of the organization, different teams that people can be involved with, but they're not by default, you'd create a public team. So let's say it's social club. Anyone can join the social club, or they can leave at any time. Then you'd use a public team. So people, when they click on the join or create a team button, up here would be a picture with social club. They'd click join and they can join it. They don't need anyone to approve it or anything like that. And the last sort, which is very helpful for people who are setting up teams, is organization-wide. So if you want to have let's say a COVID notification team where all the news and discussions about whether or not you're working from the office or at home, or what your policies are around COVID, you'd make an organization-wide team. And this is a team that everyone in the organization is automatically a member of. So you don't need to have to go through manually and add people to the team. So I'll quickly make a private one. Just call it something like that, create a team. Then I want to make sure that Megan's also part of it. So in a second, it's going to give me an option to, add Megan in.
I prefer Megan.
Megan, there we go. does take a few seconds, but at this time you can add in multiple people. So you go bang, 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 have a whole list. We'll just quickly talk about members and owners. So if you make a team, you're automatically the owner and everyone else is a member. The difference being an owner can add and remove people from the team, especially in private teams, this is important. A member can fully participate, they can see all the documents, they can see everything like that, but they can't, they can't add or remove users. So make me an owner, and that's all there is really to it to make a team. You'll see it's popped up down here.
I got the
Megan saying thanks. Yeah, send back a smiley face. It's as easy as that to make a new team. Automatically, of course, you get a new place to put your files. This is just set up. Adding channels is also even easier. Click the dots, add channel, add in a channel, and automatically make it pop up on everyone's list. Add, and all of a sudden we've got a separate conversation thread added down below, like so. It's as easy as that. Now, one thing, a slightly more advanced thing that if you're already using Teams, that many people don't know about is the apps. So if you click on apps, these are all the different integrations that Teams offers. There are a lot of them, and they're adding new ones all the time. So if you're using another program, let's say you're using Atlassian, or maybe you're using Power Apps, or maybe you use Kahoots, many different apps that can integrate with Teams, and they all do different things, but normally they add more depth into the Teams experience. So you might be able to pull in surveys, or you might be able to view people's computer screens, etc., etc. There's lots of them, and they all do different things.
Forms is a very powerful and common one. I'm not sure if you've got any examples in there, Alex, but
yeah.
Forms is one we use extensively, and it is for example, we have a health and safety group, health and safety team and channel, and in there people and all staff have access to it, and that's where people can go in and fill an incident form or a near miss, or get access to fill in forms related to health and safety. So that's an example. They don't have to leave. They don't have to go to a website or anything. They don't have to download a document. They go into Teams, click one of the tabs, and in there they can fill in a form that goes through and is done. So yeah, it's pretty powerful once you get going on that. And Alex is building one at the moment.
Yeah, so I can build it. I can ask them to answer a question, yes, no. I can share it with people when I'm done, and I can even look back and look at all the responses. So anyone in the channel can immediately, I can post about it that, hey, look at the top, I've made a form, can you guys please fill it out, to quickly survey the entire organization if I wanted to. So that's just one of the apps you can do. Another common one is Planner. So this is, if you've ever used Trello or anything similar like that, I can quickly make a board, and we can quickly organize and make plans for people to do things. Again, adds it at the top, it's called tasks. So if you're doing a project or something, it's super simple to go, and then I want to assign that to, I will need it done by Friday, add task, and that's automatically assigned that to Megan. And again, if she wants to see all the tasks, you just can get to it from the posts, and you'll see up here. So if I want to get someone's attention within a team, another great thing to do is to hit the @ symbol on your keyboard like that, and then it'll give you a drop down of everyone who's inside this team and send it to that. And that way, the person you're tagging knows to click onto tasks and see that I've given them tasks. But honestly, the amount of integrations is growing every single day. There's so many unique ways that you can use your different channels and different teams. I really encourage you just to click that apps button and just have a play, make a few test teams, and just maybe have a test team, and you can just test all the different kinds of apps. Or if you're already using like a CRM or something, check out and see how it can link in with Teams, because you might be surprised.
Yeah. Instead of handing over to me, Alex, why don't I just briefly explain the next segment, unless there's something else you want to demonstrate here.
That's all.
So the next segment is Teams meetings, which is really allowing your individuals to communicate with each other in a more extensive way. So that includes actually video calling each other, like in Zoom or Skype for Business or Skype or whatever messenger video, but it also is audio calling and recording meetings, screen sharing, and how you initiate those calls. And it's critical to show that you don't just make calls with your teammates, you make calls with external people that have never touched Teams before and never used it and don't have a Teams account. So Alex, do you want to take us through that, mate?
Yeah, so there's probably two main ways that you can start and set up a meeting. I'll go through both. I'll show you the quick and easy one for external people, and I'll show you the one that we use quite often internally. So for an internal meeting, let's say we're going to have it, and we want to have the example team to have a meeting to kick it off. We can click on calendar, and you can see this will bring through your Outlook calendar and where you're busy and everything. So this is just looking at you. I say, okay, I want to have a meeting now. You just click on the spot. And much like setting up a meeting in Outlook or anywhere, you give it a title. We want Megan to join. And here's the important bit. See where it says channel? We can actually say, okay, I want an example team. I want the meeting to take place in the test 1 channel. And what this means that any recording that we make during the call will be saved into that channel. So if you've got a project and you're going to have different meetings, say on design or the go to market, and you want to have a meeting about that, you'd have it in the correct channel. And then like any other meeting, you can type notes about what you want to talk or get out of it, and a location if you're not going to be doing it virtually. And send the time, obviously. Click send, and that will automatically create in everyone who's invited calendar a calendar entry like this. If we give it a second, we'll see there's a join button. So if I click join, it's instantly going to set me into the meeting.
And for information to everyone, Megan, would have received an email traditional sort of meeting, an email request as well with a meeting in there, which I can click join from email. But I also have just after Alex has joined, or as I've got a pop-up telling him that I've joined the meeting. Do you want me to join it, Alex?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, there might be I might be cut off, guys. This is a bit of a interesting.
It's always difficult to share a live video while talking on video. So I can see who's been invited. I can see that Megan's invited down there. If there's many people in a meeting, you can all raise your hand, which is a polite way of saying I want to talk if you're going on too long. Show conversation. There's also a chat. So if you want to post links or post some stats or something as you're talking, you can do that.
Hello.
One of the things, hello. We've got you coming through Teams. If you look down the bottom here as well, start recording. If I start recording, that's going to start recording the meeting. So I always like to think there's a few main ways that people communicate. There's the text messaging. There's like submitting documents to work on together. And then there's of course meetings where you're making decisions. So if someone can't make a meeting, then recording is always a great thing to do. Once you've finished the meeting, it actually pops up the video in the channel where I've set it, so anyone can click back and watch that if they missed it. And now Microsoft keeps adding so many features to the meetings, like every week it seems. We can't show you these, but if you've got over 10 videos, you can see large gallery. So at the moment I'm just looking at one person. But if I had 10 people on this channel, I could have large gallery, and I think that can do up to 49 different videos, I think is the limit for that.
Yeah, traditionally you had not like Teams before COVID, you could only have 4 people on screen at once, and now it's kind of more like Zoom where you got 20, 30 people, which is key. It was a bit of a weakness.
Another one is together mode, which we occasionally use, where it basically cuts out everyone's heads and puts them in an auditorium style view, which can be interesting just to change things up. Background effects is another thing. So if you've got a boring background like I've got, and I want to throw something interesting, I can just change where I am, just like that. You'll probably be familiar with this, and yes, you can of course set your own backgrounds. So if you want to pretend that you're in the office, then that's what you can do. We've got several staff members have actually taken pictures of their old desk and then set that up as a background.
Starting to become quite mainstream. I must follow Stanley Kubrick, the film director, on Facebook, and I got this message saying you could download Stanley Kubrick Teams backgrounds, which is quite unusual. So if you want to have a meeting where you take place in the hotel in The Shining, you can. And there's heaps of things like that on there, so have a bit of a look for a bit of fun. If that is an organisation, if you're as an organisation where you think that is appropriate.
Yeah, so have a play, set up a meeting, check out the meeting notes options, check out what settings you can set, and meeting details so you can see what's happening, and play around with sharing your screen. So sharing content, it's as simple as that. If I click this, it'll give you a little pop-up and you can share all your different screens that you've got open, and including computer sound. So if you're trying
to take control as well.
Yeah, you can also let remote people take control. So we use this extensively. Like if we've got a bunch of us in a conference room, and someone brings their laptop into the conference room, they can share the screen with everyone, so everyone in person can see it, and anyone who's joining that meeting remotely can also see the screen at the same time. So it's very, very powerful. And then, yeah, to end a meeting, just leave, and that will finish the meeting up. If we jump back into Teams, you'll see that the recording has started, and in a few minutes, it will give me an option where I can review that video. It's also got an automatic transcription feature as well, which we've used on occasion, where if you don't want to watch a 50-minute meeting, but you just want to look at what was discussed for the part that you're interested in, you can click on it, start typing a few keywords, and hopefully it will jump to the right part in the meeting. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good.
It's a pretty cool feature, and you can see where it's going to head. Could save a lot of time on writing notes.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So you could be, sorry, Alex, just to comment. This is kind of a, using it till its fullest in a way, like the meetings, but you could use it like a lot of people use it. You click on one of your colleagues that you've been communicating with, and you just click video call, and that's what most people will do. Yeah, for internal.
So it's the difference between like an ad hoc meeting and a set meeting. So if I just want to ask on something, I'll just give them a call. But if I want a group of people to sit down and discuss something at a set time, do it this way. If you want to invite an external person who may or may not have Teams, it's super simple. The easiest way that I find to do it is just to jump into your Outlook, and let's say I want to start a new meeting. I just click the new Teams meeting, and then
most of you,
whoever I want.
If you've got 365 installed, you should have that icon, and you might have never seen it before. Create Teams meeting, is it, or new Teams meeting? And you also will have the ability to just add Teams meeting if you're already trying to set up another meeting. So what it does, and it's critical, and it's easy to miss it, and some people do miss it, and sometimes you need to explain it to them, but it's similar to Zoom, is when you click on new Teams meeting, do you want to do it again, Alex? It's got that link at the bottom, and that, just to be clear, that link that says click here to join a meeting allows anyone on any device with no account or never used Teams before to join your meeting. It just like Zoom. It'll offer them to download the software and do it kind of like this GoToMeeting may have, but you don't require a login, and that is critical because a lot of people misunderstand Teams. They believe that Teams is for internal, and if you want to communicate with a third party, you need to use something like Zoom. But this is the link, and you can copy that link and just email it to someone if you want. It's not ideal because they're going to think you're ready now, but you might want the meeting in 2 hours, but you can do that. Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you don't want to send an email, if you just need to somehow get it to them, Facebook, you can just paste the meeting in like that. So I think that's probably enough for meetings. I'll hand back to you now, Conan, and keep going.
Sounds good. Hopefully it's sharing the right screen. Yes. Okay, so you can also do a lot on the go. Teams is available on a web browser. That could be if you're on a shared computer, your partner's computer, your home computer, and you can also, it works really well on that. But a lot of, when we talked before about it being critical for us as a company, working from home or working remotely, the app, using the app on the mobile is key. If we're away from your machine, you can have settings, it'll buzz on your phone. It's sort of, I think the default structure is that if you're away from your computer for 15 minutes, it'll kind of detect that you're not using the computer, and it will start to buzz it to your phone, and it really allows us to keep connected with each other and answer those questions and help our team members. Just very quickly, this little clip here, because we couldn't show a mobile, you can do all the chat sending to each other. This is Alex and Ben sending a message back in Feb. yeah, it's obviously very instant, just like you know, Facebook Messenger or text message. But we have stopped using anything. We don't text each other anymore. We don't send each other messages on WhatsApp or anything like that. We just send each other a Teams message.
It's quite fully featured as well, the app. It also, you can join meetings, you can look at the files and the documents. That all works fine on the phone as well.
Yeah,
so yeah, it's quite powerful.
Yeah. So some key points just to make sure we're clear. So chat groups versus teams. Chat groups are great when you want to have you want to send a message direct to someone, kind of like you're sending someone a question in an email. So you want to send the questions, you just want to go. So we'll often start one up or say, hey, Alex and Ben, just want to ask you, you know, who's working on this, or can you give me an update, or when was the last time you talked to this person? They can be persistent, so you're doing them all the time regularly, or they can be one-off. Whereas a Teams channel is something where you permanently want to store and kind of file something that goes beyond a single conversation, multiple conversations, multiple facets of conversations, multiple topics, and it's a bit more permanent. Teams versus channels. So a Teams team is a top level element, whereas a channel is kind of a sub-level. Is that correct, Alex?
Yes. And in terms of limitations, you can have, I think it's now 2 million teams with 200 channels each. So you're not going to run out of teams. Make as many as you want.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And generally there'll be a number of channels before they start to, you know, we've got a general, so we have a general channel in the IT team, and that's kind of more the open, the public, as we say, public internally. There's no real restrictions or privacy things, and in there we'll have sort of social club and fun, and you know, where people put random things and some things around general technology, and we've got to the point where we're at about 20, and so it starts to sort of top out at about 10.
I'd probably say you don't really want to add more than 7 or so. If you've got more than 7 channels per team, make a new team. Split it out
with a new team. Self-evolution versus rigid structure. Alex, do you want to touch on this? This is your sort of topic.
So historically, a lot of organizations would operate from a kind of a rigid structure. We're going to have a finance team, we're going to have a marketing team, we're going to have a lunchtime team, whatever. The more modern approach, and this is the approach that Microsoft actually use internally, is to have a very self-evolutionary approach where they let everyone make teams. They don't want to make it difficult to people to start up a discussion about a new project. And I think the reason being is if you make it really rigid and people can't quickly make a team, they'll just start using the chat function to discuss a project, or they'll start using some other form of IT, the shadow IT that Connor was talking about. So yeah, I'm definitely a pro for the self-evolution style of teams.
Yeah, that's right. Teams tabs. Tabs are ways that you can, well, you've obviously got the chat, and that's in everyone, and that's kind of the center of things, but you can have meeting notes, you can have wiki, you can have forms. So make sure you, as you get more and more into Teams, you have a look at that. And as we say, forms is probably the first place to go for when you want to expand your usage of forms. If you're not using Microsoft Forms, have a play and have a look at it. So a couple of advanced things before we sort of finish up the content. We're going to do a wee quiz. Advanced, you can use Teams calling, as it's called, or Teams voice, as your phone system, which can be using a handset like you can see in that image, or just using a dialer pad. So that allows you to dial mobile phones and landlines and talk to them in a normal way. We would only recommend you approach this if you have to have a phone system and you're already using Teams. Some people sometimes come to us and say, we're not using Teams, but we think it's a good idea for one-stop shop. Well, you want your staff to be familiar with Teams before you add that on, because it is a bit of a leap and it is different. So, but it is possible to have that as your phone system. Secondly, Teams rooms. These are pretty cool. So if you've got a meeting room system and you want to sort of, well, improve the way you're doing conferencing, Teams rooms are a way to get a really simple and elegant structure for your Teams, for your meeting rooms. You don't need a computer in there, the traditional computer where you have a keyboard and mouse. You have just the equipment that you can see in this image. You start the meeting with a tablet. By pushing the button, start the meeting, or invite someone external. You can add Zoom meetings to this, so you can receive Zoom meetings. The quality is really good, and it's really simple, and it just takes away cables and mucking around. If you want to share content, you can bring a laptop to put your content on screen, but you don't need any cables. It's really good. So if you'd like more information on that, feel free to message us. Right, we're going to do a quick quiz just to test your knowledge and kind of confirm knowledge, I guess. Jane, are you able to chuck up a couple of polls? I'll start with the first one. True or false? This is true or false, by the way. Should have said that. You can use Teams to book a meeting with someone that doesn't have a Teams account.
Woohoo! Yep, that's
Thank
100%
goodness.
true. Yes, you can use Teams with external people. So, yeah. Next one.
Very pleased with that. Thank you
Not much to talk about if it's 100%.
who are listening.
Still
Teams
waiting for a
control
few
landlines.
people.
Yeah. It's not an
Don't
easy
give me the
question, this
answer.
one. And to be fair, I don't think I explained this perfectly, but
Yeah.
we will see. Yeah, good answer. All right, well, there we go. So Teams can call landlines out of the box. Look, it is actually false. I have to admit, this is me, mea culpa. The Teams calling is something that needs to be added on as an advanced function. You do need to have an add-on, potentially a license, and also potentially something called zip trunk. So you do need a provider to do it. But that's because I didn't explain it very well. So that's all good. Next question. You can use Teams to store or file documents or files.
Perfect. Yeah, we've got 95U is said true, and true is the correct answer. Just to quickly add on to that, Teams is actually using SharePoint and OneDrive as its storage backend, and you can add other storage backends as well. So if you use Dropbox or something like that, Teams will let you save the files that are dragged onto it into those places as well.
Yeah, and you can technically have Teams if you've got OneDrive on your desktop, OneDrive for Business, and you've got folders and structures in there, you can technically set it up so that the files that are dropped in Teams synchronize to the same sort of structure on your OneDrive. Cool. Next question. You cannot initiate ongoing chat with people outside your organization except on a video call. This is one we didn't touch on.
Good to see if people have used it before.
We did come up with these, by the way, everyone. It just seems like the way I'm asking them that I'm unfamiliar with them, but we did. Well, the answer is actually false. So you can, sort of a double negative, I know this is a nuisance, but you can initiate ongoing chat with people outside your organization. So if you have people, there needs to be a setting change potentially based on permissions, but if you've got someone you know uses Teams in their organization, you can have a way to communicate with them ongoing. We have customers, some customers, we've got to be careful about that, but that we'll have ongoing communication with. We're in a separate domain, separate system, but that is something you can do. So if you're interested in doing that, then you can.
Of course, if your organization doesn't want to, you can also block that as well.
That's right, and that's a key thing. Yeah, you want to be careful. You must book Teams meetings with third parties as an outside your organization within Teams. True, false? Well, majority is correct, so it is false. So you can book Teams meetings with third parties in Outlook, and that is generally the most common way someone would book it. So yes, make sure when you get a chance, book it in Outlook. Is there any more? Is that it, Jane? Is that the last one, or is this the last one, or is there one?
No, this one and another one.
Cool. So you can't restrict staff from creating new teams and channels, as in true or false. You're unable to make restrictions from that. That is correct. The majority got it correct. You can restrict staff from creating new teams and channels. Alex gave the spiel on whether you should or you shouldn't, but it is something you're able to. So false is correct. Well done. And last one. You can only have 4 heads visible, 4 calls visible on a call at one time. 4 contacts. Oh, there we go. Well done. False. Yes, correct. You now can have 50 or whatever. It was 4. Only
About a
7
year
or 8
ago.
months ago. Yeah, no, it was February, right? Yeah, it was limited, but they have made a big improvement to that. Okay, so thank you for that, Jane. So where to from here? Teams can have a large positive impact, and you can start small. So for those people that aren't using it, you can start with just one thing. Chat or video calling is a good place to start. If you're using Zoom and you want to look at shifting, you can do it. As we showed, the perception, as we talked about earlier, the perception is that Zoom allows you to communicate with external parties. It is not the only thing. And you could jump to Zoom if you've got a partner or a vendor or someone that uses it. But we would suggest internally and with people you wish to talk to, you should start using Teams. You can start with a small team in your organization, or you can start with the whole thing. Attempt to implement it yourself, or you can get assistance from a professional. And if you want to start exploring it and have further questions, or would like to get in touch with someone like us, or your IT provider could be good, please, we suggest you do. So I know we're running late. Apologies for that. We had oodles of time when we started, but yeah, time for questions if there are any.
There are. Is it possible to create a team with people outside the organisation? Well, you've covered that.
Yes,
just
yes,
saying,
you can.
we have 150 volunteers, and I was wanting to create a team with them, and they all have personal emails, not organisational ones.
Yep, so if you want to have someone long-term in a team, they need a Microsoft account at the very least, but you can set up a Microsoft account with the personal email address and then add them to an external team. Yes, there are some settings you do have to change to the particular team to make sure that you can share a team externally, but yes, you can.
Yeah, so you can register when they say Microsoft account. It doesn't mean a Hotmail or at Microsoft. It means a Gmail or Extra or whatever is in Australia. GoDaddy, anything can become a Microsoft account.
Yep.
When you sent the file, where was it physically? As you said, he can update it and it will be on the one file. So is it just a link to the file and not an attachment as per an email?
Yeah, so when I share a file with another person in the chat function, it's saving that file in OneDrive, which is Microsoft's personal storage. So for files that you want to share with just one-on-one. If I share a file within a team, that gets saved on SharePoint, which is, like the name suggests, for sharing with everyone else. And SharePoint and OneDrive are probably topics for a different webinar, but that's where they are saved. You can also set up other locations if you want to save as well. Yeah.
Thank you. And Mez is asking, are those channels that you're showing the same as SharePoint?
So the channels within each team are folders within the SharePoint documents library. And yes, each team itself also has a corresponding team site in SharePoint. So if you're using SharePoint, it integrates very, very closely with Teams. And yeah, I'd suggest that when you're creating team sites or you're creating Microsoft teams, that you make sure that you're just doing one for whatever topic it is and you get both automatically. Yeah.
Do people tend to overlook files? Are people notified when files are uploaded?
Not really. I think most people do notice when people are messaging them. A lot of people, to be honest, I get a lot of messages, so I won't take priority at looking at messages or files that people have sent me unless they've mentioned me explicitly. So if they mention me, so at Alex, it'll show up in red, and then I know to click and read it because it's sent to me. If someone's just sending a message on another channel that I don't look at very often, I might not read that for a week or so. It really depends. Yeah.
And if you share a document in Teams and it's saved in SharePoint, are any changes saved across both platforms?
Correct. So Teams is really just a front end for SharePoint when it comes to files. So if any changes is made in SharePoint, then yes, it will be up to date when you open it in Teams as well.
Somebody was just asking, was that a paid version that you were demoing?
It's one of Microsoft's. Yeah. So what the environment was an Office 365 or Microsoft 365 demo account. So it had a bunch of users and a bunch of licenses. I think those ones were using Microsoft 365 Business Premium. And if you're a non-profit, that's probably going to be, I think you get 10 of them for free. And then after that, at a much reduced rate to corporates.
But Business Essentials, or Business Basic as it is free, and everything we showed you today can be done on Business Basic license, which is free for not-for-profits. Now, technically, I think Teams is actually free, or you can set up a Teams account for free with Microsoft if you're not even if you're a not-for-profit. But if you aren't using Teams, TechSoup's the way to go for getting Business Basic licenses, which give you the ability to do everything we showed you. Hopefully that answers.
And one final question. I'm specifically interested in finding out how to take meeting notes in a channel. I can see the function under chat, but would like to know how to keep it in the channel.
Yeah, so if you've written meeting notes, it does pop up as a little pop-up in the channel, and also you can probably make that as a tab, so you can look back and look at meeting notes there. What we tend to do, because normally having lots of meetings quite frequently, you don't really care what happened in the meeting a year ago. You're more interested in what happened last week, just to check that you've done all the tasks, all the outcomes. So just putting them in the channel chat is normally enough, and that is automatic.
And somebody's just asking, can you record under the free version? I've never been able to.
Don't think so. It depends what you mean by free version.
Yeah, if you're talking about the free TechSoup, like Business Basic, I mean, I believe there is a free edition of Teams, which is kind of almost for consumers, compared to Zoom. But if you talk, yeah, I think you may have limitations because you probably don't have access to stream. But if you're on this call, I'd imagine that means you're a not-for-profit, which means you can likely apply for Business Basic licenses, which should give you access to Teams and all the functionality that includes the ability to record.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. That's all. Great.
Yep.
Good questions there, team. And if you do have any others, feel free to email us at webinars or webinar. I think it's webinar@theiitteam.co.nz. Somehow I missed that. Or myself, Conan, at theiitteam.co.nz, or Alex at theiitteam.co.nz. You may wish to just ask us a question or ask us for help, whatever you would like to do. We are here, that's what we do. So, yeah, I guess from us, thank you for attending. Hopefully you got something out of it. And hope you come to another one of the TechSoup webinars, particularly if it's an IT team one.
Perfect. Thank you both very much, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Like I said at the beginning, this has been recorded, and you'll all get a copy of the slides and the recordings and Alex and Conan's email address if you need to get in touch for any help. And please can everybody just take a moment to fill out the survey that will just be popping up at the end of this. Thank you both. Have a great day, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jane. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Cheers.